Hello, hello. The Secrets to Sleep, Baby and Toddler Sleep Help Group. My name is Courtney. I am a pediatric sleep consultant. I'm your host. I help families get a great night of sleep. Today we're going to be talking about how to be successful with sleep training. Okay? I think this is a really great topic. This is not a topic that necessarily teaches you how to sleep train. This is telling you all the things that you need to do other than just know how to sleep train. Okay? So here, let's go into it. How to be successful with sleep training. I wrote a post on this and I wrote, set up a game plan, okay? Set up a game plan, okay? One of the top reasons why people fail when they do some sort of a sleep training process is because they just jump into it and they haven't got their game plan set up. So let's go into this, okay? Number one, know your strategy, okay? Whatever strategy you use, whether you're using a Ferber method, cry it out method, camping out, pick up, put down, gradual reduction method, whatever strategy you are using, you should know your method. I would anticipate that if you're going to do some sort of sleep training, you should either be, watching a video on it, reading a book about it, do something, know the method. Because if you are not using the method correctly, it's not going to work. Okay? Know your method. Okay? And then here's what people do. I find people tend to read up on the method, try the method, and they haven't kind of set up a game plan for all of the other factors, okay? Here's the other factors I think are really important. Okay, know what obstacles will come up and why some will fail, okay? So, for example, we'll talk about a Ferber method just because it's really common. A Ferber method is when we lay our baby in bed and we leave the room and we kind of check in, we gradually check in, we give ourselves longer and longer to check in. So maybe we check in, 5 minutes, and then we come back in 7 minutes, then we come back in 9 minutes, something like that. The actual numbers that you do don't really matter, but that's the idea of a Ferber method, okay? So that would be knowing your strategy, and then know what obstacles will come up and why some fail. So for a Ferber method, the reason why, in my, experience of what I've heard, the reason why most people fail when it comes to this, it's not that people fail, it's that and it's not that the method fails, it's why did the sleep training fail? It's because people don't use the methods correctly. The number one thing that comes up in a Ferber method is that babies cry a lot, right? The baby cries a lot, and then the parent goes, I can't handle this, and then they pick up their baby and they rock their baby to sleep, right? Then they go and they try the method again, for the next time the baby wakes up, they go, oh my gosh, the baby's been crying so long, they pick up their baby and they rock their baby to sleep, okay? This is using the strategy incorrectly. And this shows that the person did not kind of know the obstacles that come up in the strategy. If you don't love, large amounts of baby crying, then the Ferber method is probably not a good method for you, right? The method I use, I have more like a gradual reduction method. The obstacles that come up are, honestly, it's like not necessarily knowing how to use it correctly, not knowing what it looks like, because the method I use, as opposed to, for example, Ferber method is very calculated. You put the baby into bed, you leave the room for 5 minutes. The method I use would be, for example, when we start the method, it's rock a baby until they're 90% asleep. If you don't know what 90% asleep looks like, that might be really challenging. So this is where it comes into place. Know your method, and then know, why some methods fail. This method might fail because you're not really quite sure what exactly you're supposed to do, okay? This is where it's important. Know your strategy, know why it fails. Eliminate, this is the next one, eliminate the culprits, okay? And also don't switch them out. So for example, I mentioned in the pacifier live, if you have a baby that is 4 to 8 months old and they are using a pacifier, we can't just jump in and do some sleep training and hope that they're going to sleep really well when they have this culprit, this thing that can just interfere with their sleep, right? So a 4-month-old baby, they're not able to take the soother and put it back into their mouth. That is a culprit. It's something that needs to be eliminated. If we're going to do a sleep training method for 8 months, a littler baby, we have to just, ditch the pacifier, find another way. If you have an older baby, it could still be a culprit, okay? So for example, I had a family say that they breastfed the baby until very sleepy, kind of, this is kind of my gradual method a little bit, and then they take the soother and they place it in the let's say a one-year-old's mouth, and they put the 1-year-old baby back into the bed, and they said, I just can't figure out why the baby toddler is waking up. And I said, it's because you're the one putting the soother in. Okay, this is a little one old enough to put the soother in their mouth, but if their mom does it every time and they don't get into this habit of taking the soother, putting it in their own mouth, then it's still a culprit. So one thing we need to do when we do sleep training to set us up for success is to, take away the culprits. Another thing that is a culprit when it comes to sleep training, something that interferes with a little one's ability to self-settle, is replacing our habit. So for example, if you have a breastfeed to sleep habit, your baby wakes up every hour, every couple hours, wants to breastfeed, and you don't want to breastfeed your baby until they're asleep anymore, super common. What I find some people do is they go, okay, I'm not going to breastfeed the baby at all. I'm just going to stop cold turkey. Some families wean, right? They're like, I'm just not going to do this anymore. Totally up to you if you want to wean. I don't necessarily think that it's necessarily important. But here's what some people do. Then they go and they're like, I'm just going to get dad to put the baby to bed, like that's just going to be the way we're going to do it from now. And then dad's now rocking the baby to sleep. So we've replaced our habit of breastfeeding to sleep with another habit of rocking to sleep. And we haven't actually eliminated the culprit. The culprit when it comes to our children and the thing that's interfering with their sleep cycles is that they feel like they need help to fall asleep. So it doesn't matter which habit it is, whether it's breastfeeding, rocking, soothers, whatever it is. It means that we need to eliminate these habits in order for them to sleep really well. So if we switch out one with another, we're not going to be solving their sleep problems. We don't want to spend all of our time, when we're doing sleep training, it's a lot of work. We don't want to be spending all of our time in the wrong area. We don't want to be switching up one habit for another habit. We want to make sure that we're eliminating all of our culprits, all of the things that are interfering with sleep. We know our strategy and we're going in on that one, okay? Let's see the next one. In order to be successful with sleep training, we need to know our own tendencies and our own habits, okay? So sometimes I have a client that I'm talking with and they say, I just have a habit that in the middle of the night, when I'm really tired, I just give in and I just let my baby, fall asleep on the breast, something like that, Actually recognizing our tendencies and our habits, sometimes it's, once the baby starts to cry, I just feel like I just need to give them whatever they want to, Recognizing our own tendencies, our own habits is really important so that we can set up a plan, okay? This goes into the next one. I have one is called create a fail-safe. Before I go into that, so for example, if you're the type of person that, let's say, example, breastfeeds your baby, you tend to fall asleep while, co-sleeping with the baby. If you're doing a sleep training program, I always tell the families of like, all right, this means that in the middle of the night what you got to do. You got to sit upright when you're doing your breastfeed. You're going to hold your baby. You're going to poke yourself in the face. You're going to keep yourself awake so that you can be really disciplined for the 3 weeks of sleep training that you're doing to make sure that, you're not kind of giving in your own way of, falling asleep, for 3 weeks, right? Because once you're done your 3-week program, you'll be done. Your baby will sleep through the night. You don't ever have to do this again, right? But for the 3 weeks, we got to be all in with our own habits, which goes into the next thing of create a fail-safe. So a fail-safe means that, if it's the middle of the night and you're really tired and your baby is, maybe it started to cry now, and this is the point where you would want to give in and rock your baby to sleep, have a plan, have a backup plan, okay? So for families, we talk about kind of some options. So one option is, switch off with your spouse, right? Especially when we're doing a 3-week program, I'm like, you know what? Let's go all in for this 3 weeks. Let's put a plan in that's going to get you finished in the end. Like everyone's all hands on deck. We're going to do this, right? And that it's only 3 weeks and it's going to be a nightmare. We're all going to lose some sleep over the next 3 weeks because this is a lot of work. Our little ones are learning new habits, but once we're done the 3 weeks, we'll be done. So have a fail-safe. Okay, I feel like I'm going to give in. So our plan for this, family is my job is now to go over to my spouse, wake him up and be like, okay, hey, I've been up for an hour. I was just like, I'm losing it. Your turn, right? Another example would be, for families I find that are more co-sleeping families, to change up where the baby's location is. So I'm like, if your baby just keeps waking up and waking up and waking up and you feel like so tired that you just want to give in and breastfeed your baby to sleep or something like that, I'll be like, okay, don't breastfeed your baby to sleep. because that's not going to break this habit of breastfeeding to sleep. But if it's easier for you to, breastfeed until very, very sleepy while laying in your own bed, and then, make sure you're awake, make sure you're unlatching at whatever percentage we're at in our gradual, method, but then you can co-sleep. There's that's, that to me is like a secondary factor. It's not the main goal. The main goal when we're doing sleep training, or you could call it a self-settling method, is for them to be able to fall asleep. And this is where I say independently. And independently doesn't mean in their own crib. It means without help to sleep. So this means without having some sort of a thing like a breastfeed to sleep association where they need that breast for that sucking motion to fall asleep. Like we want to break off our sleep associations first. That's the main goal. And if you want to be, a co-sleeping family, or if you want to be, an independent sleeping family, they're sleeping in their crib as opposed to co-sleeping, those are secondary factors. Those are secondary things. If you're in the middle of the night and you feel like you're going to lose it, let's just make sure that we're kind of protecting this self-settling thing that we're trying to do. So some families, I'm like, yeah, and if you feel like you need to in the middle of the night co-sleep, do that. All right, let's go into the next one. So that was create a fail-safe. How long should it take? Okay, knowing how long your sleep training method takes is super important to see success. I saw someone wrote in a comment, they say, I tried pick up, put down, and it didn't work. This is where I'm like, okay, here's the facts, okay? Sleep training will always work, okay? Every single time. What working looks like might look different from one family to another. For example, if we're doing a sleep training with a 4-month-old baby, that working doesn't necessarily mean sleeping through the night. It always means a little one learns how to self-settle. So babies can always self-settle. If we do a sleep training method correctly, it will always work. Gentle methods always work. People ask me, do gentle methods work? They totally work. They take longer, okay? Sleep training will always work. No matter what method you use, if you use it correctly, it will always work. The goal is for a baby to self-settle. If a 4-month-old baby knows how to self-settle, if we're talking a healthy baby, they probably need a couple wake-ups in the night. A 6-month-old or older healthy baby, maybe one wake-up, maybe starting to sleep through about that age, okay? So this is where it goes, like, how long should it take? Okay, so if you're doing a Ferber method, this is where I tell people, I'm like, you're expecting like 5 to 7 days of hard crying, That's how long it takes. That's the method that, if you use that method, that you've chosen, right? So to be, accepting of that, accepting of what the method looks like, and that's what you go with. I work more like with gradual methods, gentle methods, okay? I always tell families it takes about 3 weeks. So it's not just give it a try, see how it works. It's like, no. We're breaking off a habit. There's no giving it a try. There's working really hard for 3 weeks every single time to consistently break off this habit to be successful in allowing our little one to self-settle in the end. If sometimes we pick up our baby and rock our baby to sleep, we are not doing the strategy correctly. We cannot finish the process with a baby self-settling, okay? So this is where it goes. How long should it take? It's really important for my families because when I'm doing the 3 weeks Better Sleep program and we're like halfway through, they're like a week and a half, they're like, oh my gosh, I just don't feel like I can do this anymore. I'm like, you are a week and a half through, one more week, maybe a week and a half, and you're done. And you never have to do this again. Your baby will sleep through the night, just trust me on it and get through it. It's that sort of a thing of sometimes like holding on to that and being like, okay, I know this is tough. I know I'm awake more in the night. I know it's really challenging, but I also know that there's the light at the end of the tunnel and I can see the light now, It's really helpful, okay? So if we're just not sure how long it should take, if you've been sleep training your baby and it's been like months, chances are there's something going there. There's either some sort of culprit that's interfering that you didn't know about, or chances are there's some sort of way that you are using the strategy that's not allowing it to work. Okay, so this is why it's really important to know how long your strategy should take. And it goes into the last point I want to make, to be able to give it 100%. Okay? There's no, okay, I'll give it a try. There's, I'm going to put the work in until it's completed. Okay? We can't just give it a try because it's forming a habit, breaking habits, forming new habits. There's no giving that a try because yes, Our toddlers might get really upset with us. Our babies don't really know what's going on. We need to be the ones to know what we're doing and what our goals are, and to give it 100% until we get there, because if not, we will not be successful, okay? 100% in, all in, okay? I tell families, hey, come join the 3 Weeks to Better Sleep, program. It's like boot camp, woohoo, It's going to take all your time and all your effort for the next 3 weeks, but your baby can sleep through the night at the end, okay? I hope that's helpful information for everyone. If you want some help with sleep training, like this is one thing I think is really important, because it's not just knowing the strategy or the method. It's feeling like you can actually accomplish it until you do accomplish it, right? So that you don't give in, so that you are taking all your effort and energy and putting it in the right place, instead of trying to, shift around. So if you're trying sleep training and, maybe you've tried it and you can't figure it out, or, you've been in the process for a long time and you know that something is not working, please send me a DM, okay? I would love to schedule a free sleep strategy call with you. I want to book a call. I want to talk to you about it. I want to help you set up a game plan, okay? So I welcome everyone. Come join the 3 Weeks to Better Sleep program. A lot of families are coming through here, and getting their babies to sleep through the night by the end. We use more, gentle, gradual methods. It doesn't mean that there's going to be 100% no crying, but there's definitely ways that we can always attend to our babies. We can feed them every wake up in the night. We can, pick them up every time they cry. That's what we do in the 3 Weeks to Better Sleep program, but we change the habits that are in place that are interfering with their sleep. Okay, so that's what I do as more of a gentle sleep consultant. I welcome you to join. I'd love to work with you, and I still have some spots available for our sleep strategy calls on Tuesday. Okay, so send me a DM, let's book a call, and let's get down to the bottom of it. Okay, bye everyone.